Welcome to the Beyond You podcast, where we have real conversations about healing, trusting yourself again, and building the kind of relationships that actually feel good. I'm Samantha, and if you've ever felt like you're just going through the motions, like you're doing all the right things but still feeling disconnected, you're in the right place. Because here we go beyond the surface, beyond the hurt, beyond the patterns that keep you stuck. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's get into it. Okay, so how many of you are living a life that looks good on paper but feels empty in your soul? Like you're checking all the boxes, good job, nice home, people who care about you, but somehow you still feel like you're watching someone else's life through your own eyes. And today I have my friend Marlon Wesh here, and we're talking about something that's going to shift everything for you, the difference between surviving and actually living, because understand that you are in a place where giving yourself permission to be you needs to be acknowledged. So you're a lot of times we're just buried underneath years of people pleasing, codependency, and trying to be who everyone else needs you to be. So I'm Samantha. This is Beyond You podcast, and today we're talking about how to stop waiting for permission to be yourself. And so, y'all, I'm so excited to have Marlon here today. He is a keynote speaker, momentum coach, and former U.S. Marine who helps people lift the fog of people pleasing and codependency so they can reclaim their power and live a life on their own terms. And when I tell you this man has some insights that are going to change how you see yourself, Marlon, I read your bio, and what struck me is that you don't just teach transformation, that you've lived it. Right. And so your journey hasn't followed a straight path, but I think that is what makes it so powerful. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Samantha. I'm glad to be here.
Of course. And so now, before we dive deep, I have to tell our listeners, you and I were talking before, we were just kind of talking about different things, and I noticed that it was just most people aren't living, they're just surviving really well, and that you mentioned that. And as someone who works with women who are trying to heal from relationships that have drained them, that just hit different. So talk to me about that. Just how it is, the survival versus living concept.
Yeah. I think when you're talking about survival, it's a constant, it's like you're in the waiting room, right? Waiting for life to get better for you, waiting for things to happen that you wish would happen, but it's really leaving it to chance, and to chance being hopefully people recognize your worth, hopefully people um figure out that they're treating you poorly. um,
Yeah.
Newsflash, they already know.
Right.
Hopefully, everything just falls in your lap because it's the right thing, because you're a good person and these are bad things
Hmm.
happening.
Hmm.
As somebody that has justice and fairness pretty high up on my list of core values,
Yeah.
that just resonates with me. But unfortunately, that's not the way the world works. I think we live in a quite um, a violent world, and I don't just
Hmm.
mean like physical violence.
Hmm.
Our society responds to the loudest, to the strongest, to
Yeah.
the best looking, to the most able bodied, and it really just leaves everyone else in the periphery. And so going from surviving to thriving is just, for me, is being extremely intentional about creating a life that you want to live,
Hmm.
understanding, and this is, the big one for me, understanding to do that, it comes with consequences.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Yeah.
and you willing to pay the consequences is ultimately the cost for you living the life that you want to live. And it sounds dire when I'm saying it, but
Hmm.
for me, once I realized that, oh, I just have to pay this in order to be this, to feel this, it's like I can do that. Like it's
Hmm.
hard, but like I can do hard things. And there is a level of freedom realizing that all I have to do is this thing that sucks, and then
Hmm.
and it's not even like I hope something will happen. I'm guaranteed that it will
Hmm.
happen
Hmm.
because it moves people out of my way that shouldn't be there.
Hmm.
You think about, and for our listeners who are already on this journey and may have taken that step into like, hey, I'm no longer people pleasing, I'm showing up authentically. Everybody that's in your circle only knows that people pleasing side of you. So they're
Mm.
looking at you like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in your mind, you're like, well, I'm this person too, but they don't see it that way. And they can't see it that way because that's not how you showed up. You're still a good person, but that's not how you showed up. And they ultimately would not be attracted to, and I'm not talking about romantically, just like
Mm-hmm.
gravitate to somebody like your authentic self. So they got to go. And you don't even have
Yeah.
to be like, go, they will leave.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So these are part of the consequences, but it really frees you up to really build a life because it's like this snowball effect of I do this one thing and it becomes easier because all the garbage in my life just dissipates because it
Mm.
can't stand my light. And so that to me is the difference between just survival and thriving.
Right. And I think even when you say consequences, because a lot of people don't even want to face those consequences. And so I want to hear exactly how did you before, like how things were before you had this all figured out. So take us back to who you were before you figured this out and what did survival mode look like for you and like, what consequences did you have to face with that?
Yeah, um I'm very intentional about letting people know that um maybe some things were easy. Maybe some of the hard things were easier for me because of the way I grew up. You know, my family of origin were not a loving, it wasn't a loving family unit.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse. And because of that, it wasn't a place that I wanted to remain. So even though one of the consequences I had to pay was to like leave very early, work 3, 4 jobs, walk around on foot. I tell this story that I walked 6 miles one day to work because there was like a blizzard and the buses weren't running, and of course I got hit by a car,
Oh my
um,
goodness.
and I didn't have money for lunch. So like in the break room, they must have had like some type of party or something, and what was left was like um, croutons. And I remember like taking
Mm-hmm.
some croutons and ketchup packets and eating that. And
Mm-hmm.
all of that is objectively bad, right? That
Right.
sucks.
Right.
But at least I wasn't getting my ass beat anymore.
Oh
You know,
wow.
so
Yeah.
so there is some truth. Like I can imagine me growing up with a loving family, having
Mm.
all the comfort in the world,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, growing up going to the best schools, going on trips. I had
Yeah.
deep connections in the community, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And then just realizing, wow, that's somebody else's life. And I want to do I think it's objectively harder to do that. And I want to
Yeah.
take my hats off to people who, for all intents and purposes, lived a very privileged, comfortable life and now are, needing to make like a big shift in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there wasn't much for me to like fall from. So
Yeah.
in a way, I think that was a little bit easier um, for me. But what started happening was as I freed myself from that hell and started progressing in my life, I eventually got in the Marine Corps. I served eight
Yeah.
years there. I did, Kel Surprise, right? That somebody with this type of trauma did very well in
Yeah.
the military, but did very well in the Marines. I was meritoriously promoted twice. I was awarded twice the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal.
Wow.
I volunteered in the community, earned the outstanding volunteer service medal. I got certificates of commendation. I was
Mm-hmm.
what we call a PT stud, meaning I could run, I could shoot, I could pull up,
Mm-hmm.
like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, in a very, so like my life ultimately started getting better. I was able to save money, and get myself out of that financial situation. Once I got out, I went back to college. I earned my undergraduate degree in finance. I earned an MBA. I eventually started a business. I purchased a home. in probably the second best neighborhood in our town. Um, so life was getting comfortable, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it is during that comfort that I had to make pay the big consequence of, you know, I have to potentially give up all of this in order for me to live a life um, that's authentic to me. And we
Hmm.
can go into that later, depending on what your questions are. But
Right.
that was in my mind a much harder decision than any other
Mm.
decision that I had to make. I have two young children. I tell everyone that if I met the love of my life when I was like 21 years old, I would have
Hmm.
been like off the streets, married, kids. Like I've always wanted to be a husband. I always wanted to be a dad.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's very core to my identity. And to have to make a decision that, in my eyes, compromised or damaged that image of myself that I held in
Oh,
myself as being able to
yeah.
be a good dad or a good husband, because I had to make a choice in all honesty to save myself at first,
Yeah.
put on that oxygen mask on first. That was a huge cost. And as it played out, the cost was even bigger than I had anticipated, losing all of my
Oh,
social community,
oh yeah.
losing family, honestly, just going through just hell with two friends by my side, none of them which lived close by,
Oh wow.
um,
Yeah.
and I look back, I was talking to my therapist the other day, and I'm like laughing in her office, not because I was like, ha ha ha, happy, but I'm like,
Hmm.
even if I wanted to take back the decision, like, go back to what? Go back
Right.
to what? It's like
Hmm.
maddening for me to even think that, let's say there was an opportunity that all of this could go away, nobody would remember, and I go like, hell to the no. Hell to the no. Um, that was the freedom that I understood when I realized I just have to do this hard thing, and then I get to live the life that I want to live.
Oh wow. And thank you for sharing that because I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people. Just your experience of having to go through that make and I think we try to survive our environments. We kind of go into what society feels like we should want to go into and then
Mhm,
kind of look in our lives and shouldn't have to make this big decision on whether to keep going and just going what feels it is right versus
mhm,
what you're talking about, just truly living, you know? And um so I know that you were talking about codependency, and this is something constantly just with my audience kind of struggle with and deal with. And people think codependency is being just too attached to someone, but it's much deeper than that. So
mhm.
what did codependency look like for you?
Oh man, it was so layered. Obviously, I walked through the world as um, a black man that came from a really tumultuous background, first generation American,
Mm,
child of immigrants, um, first generation college graduator,
yeah,
um, um, honestly, like first generation seeking any type of mental help.
yeah,
Um, I was always trying to make life better for myself. And I didn't have a picture of what healthy anything looked. So I was kind of like stumbling through it.
yeah,
And for me, the ultimate goal was
yeah.
love and acceptance. And I think in my late teens, definitely in my late teens, because I always remember being kind of like rebellious, stubborn about like
Mm-hmm.
my beliefs, like I don't care,
Mm-hmm.
blah, blah, blah. But then obviously as you get older and that
Yeah.
sense, that desire for belonging gets even stronger. I don't know how it began to chip away.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I do. I think I became acutely aware of being other
Mm-hmm.
as I got older.
Right.
realizing like, oh, my family is not like other people's families. The
Mm-hmm.
things that we do is not like other people. Like other people live their lives like this, and I'm not allowed to do that. So I remember, you know, as I left my parents' home, trying to figure out what the world was on my own. Like
Mm-hmm.
I grew up not being allowed to watch TV, listen to
Oh,
secular
wow.
music, or anything like that. I remember when I was in community college, um, they had a AV room,
Mhm.
and when I did between classes, I used to be in there and I just would like watch hours and hours and hours of movies,
Wow.
and shows. Um, I like pretty much had to do research on like what were the songs
Mm-hmm.
playing when I was supposed to be growing up.
Wow.
What like the cultural references and things
Mm-hmm.
that, like, oh, I should know about this right now because I was the right
Mm-hmm.
age to,
Mm-hmm.
all my other peers would have known. But here I
Yeah.
am, 17, 18 years old, um, trying to learn all of that like now, so I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be a weirdo in the world. Like my whole thing was like
Mm-hmm.
trying to assimilate and assimilate
Mm-hmm.
naturally. Um, Assimilate, I did. I used to think this was like a positive thing, me being able to be in any group
Yeah.
of people and, be able to like handle myself. But what I realized was that I had no core identity besides looking to be loved and
Mm-hmm.
accepted, that made me deny um my instincts in order to remain.
Mm.
And one of the ways that really, really um, affected me was like racially. And God, I hate Facebook memories, because
Right.
I think about, and this actually, the Marine Corps was like a big thing. Like, that was like, I think the first time I had a solid identity that I felt like I could attach to that was respectable, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so I didn't finish college or anything like that at the time, but I'm a United States Marine, the few, the proud, like that, like
Mm-hmm.
like that's a respectable, in my opinion, like in between until I figure out my life.
Right.
And the military has a culture, um, and one of the like, I would say, core values of the military, and I don't mean core values the way like they teach us, but
Mm-hmm.
just by the way people behave, is that there's no place for sensitivity, right? So you got to be able to take a joke. You got to, bah, ha, 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 ha. And so I learned to kind of like operate in that. And it's like, oh, everybody gets joked on, so it's not a big deal. And so, there were racist jokes, there were homophobic jokes, there were, whatever. And like a
Yeah.
badge of honor was like how dark the joke could be without offense, without you being offended, right?
Wow.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
when I got out and went to college in very liberal Boston, open it. Now this, I'm going to go on a tangent. I go to college, people. Go to college.
Yeah.
I was that guy that never thought I was going to go to college because I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur, and I was like, I don't need that. But um, the world of thinking and seeing people not like me, and just uh,
Mm-hmm.
it was so needed. It was so
Mm.
needed, and not for any job that I was able to get
Right.
because of my degree. Just it's important. It's important. Anyway, so I'm in Boston. I'm going to college, and I I am. I remember that we had like this core student veteran group. And
Mm-hmm.
at this time, unbeknownst to me, like I started evolving in my politic, in my beliefs, and it happened, and I can never remember. Oh, the black man that was like lynched in New York for selling like loose cigarettes and like CDs.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
I
The name
remember this
exactly.
being like an argument in my office,
Hmm.
and people, and I was like, people were saying like, well, he broke the law, he shouldn't have been breaking the law. And I'm like, bitch, I know you were driving drunk this past weekend. What are you talking about? Now you care
Hmm.
about the law?
Hmm.
Um, but that was I wrote in my journal, like that was like a moment that I realized, oh, if I wasn't wearing this uniform, I'd just be another nigger. Like there was like a very conscious like thing, and I was like, I realized that, and I started
Right.
acting differently, like realizing that this is just a blanket, and this is not. I'm not part of this group, not
Right.
truly. And
Yeah.
I started just being coming to consciousness about that. And then when I was in college, realizing how different I was from a lot of the other student veterans,
Mm.
um, I felt more ambitious. I felt
Hmm.
more aware, felt more, I don't know how to explain it. I think, with the exception of maybe two people that I knew, um, I felt everyone was still holding so tightly to
Hmm.
the military, and I was ready to move on. I was ready to move on and ready to move up. Um, and so that was like the second time me realizing, like, oh, I have this as an affiliation, but this is not who I am, and these are not my people.
Hmm.
Um, but then what that did was throw me into another looking for my people.
Hmm.
Um, so who are my people? Like the professional people, right?
Right.
You know, I joined these private clubs, and did my like networking, and I have my how the hell are you, Bob? I got my voice.
Hmm. Hmm. Right.
um and one of the markers I realized was like the better I did in life, the further away from blackness I went. And it wasn't like on purpose, like let me
Yeah.
find me some white
Right.
people. It wasn't
Right.
that. It was just
Hmm.
like, we know the structural inequities that we live in. And so as I made more money, as I had more opportunity, there were less black people around me.
Uh,
And I remember this is like when like the kind of like some shame around my seeming inability to like stick up for myself as a
mhm.
black person. I remember in the neighborhood that I bought my house in, um, we were like the only black. I was the only black person in the entire neighborhood,
Uh,
and they would every year there would be a block party, and it was always in front of our house. Because our house had it was the quietest street, so they would close that
mhm.
off. All the kids, all the families would go there. And the adults would drink, the kids would do their activities, and as you're cleaning up at the night, everybody's pretty drunk.
Mhm.
Everyone can walk home. It's no big deal, right? And there was this neighbor, very
Mhm.
lovely woman. Never had an issue with her. I remember she like put her arm around me. She was like, Marlon, you're like the whitest black man that I've ever met. And I remember like inside of me tensing up, but I didn't
Uh,
respond to it, right?
yeah.
What I really wanted to be, what the fuck you mean by that? Can
Right.
we can we curse here?
Be
So
ourselves, yeah.
what do you mean by that?
Hmm.
Um, but I didn't say anything. And there were tons of situations like that. Um, um, I once I realized how codependent I was, and I started breaking off. I had some apologies to make. I had to make an apology to a friend of mine, um, who came to my house, and somebody in my circle was telling a story and like used the N word in it, and I didn't be like, "What the hell are you doing?" Like, I froze up.
Uh,
Um, and so when I talk about codependency, I talk about like it's a pattern of self-denial,
mm,
um, a pattern of denying my right to anger. I think that was the
Mm.
big thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were
Mm-hmm.
opportunities or situations where I had legitimate rights to be upset, but
Right.
didn't feel that I could be. Because what would that
Ah.
do? Possibly anger someone, possibly
Mm-hmm.
offend someone, and then they wouldn't want to be my friend. And then they wouldn't want to be around
Mm.
me. Maybe to tell people what my family of origin always said, Marlon's so sensitive. And
Mm-hmm.
so I did everything to be like cool. Not like I'm a cool guy, but just like, hey, no big deal. Like Marlon doesn't have
Mm.
sensitive skin, blah, 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 blah. But every time I did that, um, I felt not going to be a nerd for you Harry Potter fans in there. I felt like I made a horror crux of myself. I, separated myself and until I was less and less of a person looking like
Yeah.
Voldemort, just like a ghost. And and it just got so bad to the point where I just didn't recognize myself, didn't recognize my face, didn't recognize my
Wow.
life, didn't like it was bad. It was
Yeah.
bad. So that's how codependency showed up for me.
No, I definitely get what you're saying, and we get so much. We try to make ourselves just uncomfortable to make someone else
Right.
comfortable, right? And we just losing ourselves in just what people think that we should be, or think that how we should lose ourselves in just worrying about how they feel about things. So I definitely kind of resonate
Meanwhile, they
with
don't care
you.
about how we feel about things.
Exactly, at all. And so, I mean, what is it that, and I know we'll talk about like your five epiphanies. I don't know if that's going to tie into that or anything like that. But at first, before that, I do want to hear about kind of your penny story. I know you mentioned.
Yeah, yeah. So in the keynote that that I give, there's a story I tell about and this is part of my five epiphanies framework. It's the third step and um it's rebuilding trust in yourself by listening to
Mm,
your intuition.
mm-hmm,
And I remark how that I thought that in this situation, I was just waking up my intuition at that time, but I realized throughout my life, I had been putting deposits into myself, just in little situations that gave me the strength to do the unseeming, what?
Unseemingly?
Wow, that's not the word that I'm
Oh,
looking
okay.
for.
No
But
worries.
the seemingly oh my God, I'm brain farting.
No worries. It's okay.
Something that couldn't be done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's not true. And I talk about how building my business really like saved my life.
Mm,
It made me practice things that somebody who loved themselves had to do.
mm,
It came
mm-hmm.
from pressure though, right? The pressure of like, I got a family I got to take care of,
Right.
So I don't have this um uh I don't have the luxury of being bashful. I don't have the luxury of being like, oh, I'm so shy, I'm so shy. It was but little by little it built into something bigger. And so one of the things that I did in the beginning was like, you make sales. I guess I got a cold call. By the way, I don't believe that's the best way to make sales these days, but that's what I
Yeah.
knew at the time. And so
Mm-hmm.
I took out a shot glass, put it on my desk. I used to collect shot glasses. That's why it was on my desk.
Okay.
And I took a handful of pennies and I made a promise to myself that I was going to make at least 10 calls every day. And I put a
Mm-hmm.
penny in the shot glass for every call I made.
Mm-hmm.
This came on the heels of me reading a book by Stephen Geist called How to Be an Imperfectionist. Small book.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably one of the most meaningful books that I've ever read. Not because it was like, ah, wow, 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 but it's like
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. And he
Right.
has this philosophy of stop making massive goals because when you um, don't meet them,
Mm-hmm.
you're telling yourself like, "Damn." you can't even do that. And it just like makes you beat yourself up more. So
Yeah.
I started making myself making little promises like every day I'm gonna do one push up, one squat, and
Mm.
and one sit up or whatever. Do one, even if I'm sick, I can do one push up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just doing that, it was like every time I kept that promise to myself, it was me telling Marlon that like I can take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
And it snowballed. And so this pennies thing, um, that was like that one thing. 10 calls, probably half of them didn't even pick up, right? Like
Right.
I just have to dial 10 times. And what I didn't realize was happening was it was just practice, right? I'm putting in practice, practice,
Right.
practice, practice. Here I'm thinking that I'm only dealing with my fears, but not so. And as I reflect on that, I realize, oh my God, there were all these opportunities where I deposited pennies into the shot glass of my life, whether it was standing up to my father when I was already out of the house and I went to visit my younger brother who was still living there. I don't know what he did. My dad came out angry, like threatening to hit him, and I was already done my visit. I was walking down the sidewalk, and I turned around and I like pointed. I say, "Hey, you don't get to put your hands on anyone." And he looked
Mm-hmm.
shocked, because of course we'd never talk to him like that.
Right.
But I like walked up and I said, "You don't put your hands on anyone." I don't know where that came from, where that courage came from.
Mm-hmm.
All I know is he didn't touch him then, and he never touched him ever again clean. So
Wow.
that was a deposit into like, okay, I can stand up to bullies.
Mm-hmm.
When I left the house and I was doing all these things to survive, working 3 jobs, walking because I didn't have a car, couch surfing or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
uh, um, that's another deposit. Like, was it great? Was it a fun time? No, but it's like I can survive. I can make a choice for myself and I can resource myself to get through it. Cling, another deposit. I think about the Marine Corps, which was like a massive confidence booster because of what I had to endure in like boot camp. It's like, I mean, there's a reason why. Now I'm going to be all culty about my precious Marine Corps, but there's a reason why anyone who decides to join the Marine Corps from any other branch has to do our recruit training. It's not the same way otherwise. If I want to join the Army, no recruit training for me. If I want to join there, no recruit training for me because, I already did the hardest thing. And all those tests and those trials serve double purpose, right? One to make sure we were basically trained Marines, but also to initiate us into this mindset that like the only way like you can end us is if we're dead. Like there's no there's nothing
Mm-hmm.
that can stand in our way. And that was just like another deposit. Going to college
Yeah.
after having been homeschooled my entire life, and I put that in air quotes because both my parents worked. I had like a book. I would read the instructions, and
Mm-hmm.
my mom would check my homework when she came home from work. But I didn't have anybody saying like teaching me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so going to college after a whole life of that and just never being in a formal academic setting, crazy. I had to navigate it in a different way. Um,
Yeah.
Somehow I graduated my undergrad cum laude. Another deposit. I got my
Wow.
MBA. Another deposit. My first job out of college. In no way, shape, or form should I've had that job. It was as a major gift officer fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
They were paying me $85,000 right off the bat. That was the most money I'd ever made up
Yeah.
until then. Um, Based on my ability to public speak.
Wow.
The senior vice president saw me give a speech at an alumni event and like
Mm-hmm.
invited me for lunch. And it's like, you want a job? And I'm like, yeah, I got a baby on the way. I'm just graduating college now. Yeah, hell yeah, I want a job.
Yeah.
Um, and then starting my business. That was another thing. So these you just
Mm.
I'm stacking pennies on pennies on pennies on
Mm-hmm.
pennies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it helped me to ultimately do the hardest thing.
Yeah, and I love that you're saying that because that's what we do in codependent. Once you have that feeling of codependency, you realize it, you gave this visual representation of what you can do to break free from it, right? Rebuilding that trust within yourself. And I love how you give the visual example of the pennies to be able to do things you say you're going to do, follow through, and that builds that confidence and things that you have to go through, but you kept following through those, making those small promises to yourself to keep rebuilding that self-trust, which
Mhm.
is huge. So I know that you are known for your five epiphanies. So we definitely want to hear those five epiphanies, right? What are these five shifts?
Excuse me. Yeah. So, God, I'll give my parents this one thing. My mom used to make us journal as part of our schoolwork. And
Mm.
so I'm an avid journaler. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm reflecting, I'm reflecting, I'm reflecting. And what I realized when I broke that whole cycle of codependency, I realized there were five things that I did that
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to do it. The first one, I started telling myself the truth about what was going on around me.
Mm.
Right. You know, as a people pleaser, codependent, like you give people the benefit of the doubt that they just don't deserve.
Right.
And then so I had to start, telling myself the truth. Like, I would never treat someone like this. Like, this is so obviously
Mm.
bad. So
Mm-hmm.
if someone's acting like this, and it's not because I didn't say, like, hey, please stop, it's because they decided to offend over and over again. It's because they don't care.
Exactly. So they are.
Got to tell
Exactly.
yourself the truth. Tell
Right.
yourself the truth of what's like. Are you living the life you want, or are you seemingly get having the things that you wanted? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I had to tell myself the truth about that. I remember a session I had with a former therapist of mine, and this is not why she's a former therapist, but um, she pissed me the hell off. I
Mm-hmm.
remember before making the decision to separate from my wife, I was telling her like, oh, I just can't imagine myself, being with anyone else. And she said, "Oh, for now." And I was like, "What?" What are you paying for
Right.
now? I was so bad. She was like, for
Mm-hmm.
now, you feel that way. Um, and she made me do an exercise. She's like, write down, everything that you need in a partner,
Mm.
um, and ask yourself if your partner reflects that. Oh my God, it was a resounding no. And even
Ah.
now, I think there were like two or three things that were a yes, but now as I reflect, it was still me projecting goodness on that just didn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that came out later on to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so I had to tell myself the truth. If this is the case, and
Mm-hmm.
this is what my therapist said, she said, you either have to accept all of this and essentially stop complaining about it, just know that it will not change and
Mm.
accept it, or don't accept it and make a choice for yourself. So that was
That's
like the first step.
powerful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope people are taking notes because it's good.
But I'll tell you what helped me make the choice, which is my
Yeah.
second epiphany, is um, choose anger instead of resentment. I had
Mm.
been building resentment through all the years of like, how many times have I had to communicate that this is hurting me? How many times, whether it's through face to face, whether it's notes, or,
Yeah.
letters, or, just very intentional. I used to like write stuff down so I wouldn't let emotions, get into just be
Mm-hmm.
very clear. I want this to be a productive conversation, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how many times and how many different ways do I have to communicate, give examples? Oh, I'm the
Mm.
example king, just like,
Right.
imagine if you did this in the night, how would you feel? Like, none of it
Mm-hmm.
mattered, right? Um, and when I realized it was because, oh, they just didn't care.
Mm. That's a hard
Anger.
truth, but
It's a
that's a hard
hard
take.
truth. Anger started bubbling up. And if it wasn't for that anger,
Yeah.
I would have felt that there was something redeemable in the
Mm-hmm.
situation that there wasn't. And
Mm.
the anger was probably the first emotion that I allowed myself to express that allowed me to love myself.
Wow.
because up
Hmm.
until then, I didn't think I had a right to it.
Yeah.
I just had to accept whatever somebody gave me, and that was
Mm.
it. And that anger, oh my God, I got mad about all the years of emotional abuse, all the betrayals, all the breadcrumbs, all the things that were said and
Hmm.
done. And I got mad and I got mad. I got mad enough to be like, enough,
Yeah.
enough, enough. And so when I made that decision, um I was distraught. I'm crying. I'm in my office and I'm just like bawling, bawling, bawling because I had built a life that was built on a lie. Built on a lie
Mhm.
that not even that I told myself, a lie that was told to me and I didn't investigate for it to be
Mm.
whether it was true or not.
Hmm.
Um And I remember, and this is my third epiphany that we talked about before about tapping into your intuition. I just like jumped in my car and I'm just like crying. I'm driving on the highway. I'm driving out of my office parking lot, and I heard like a little voice in my head says like get on the highway. And so I just got on the highway and I'm driving, and that voice said exit here. So I exited there. And then that voice in my head said turn left here, turn right there. And took me through this neighborhood and told me to get back on the highway, head back home. And I talk about this in my speech like there was nothing seemingly accomplished by any of this.
Yeah.
The epiphany that I had was that trusting myself, listening to my intuition has nothing to do whether it makes sense, whether it's reasonable, whether I'm right or wrong.
Mm.
It's just me choosing to believe that I know what's in my best interests, and my best interest, if it conflicts with the world around me, I'm still going to choose me because I know me
Mm.
best. I know
Hmm.
what I need best. And I'm not going to allow myself to be confused about what should I do,
Yeah.
because I'm not um, I'm not defining my goodness by how people are reacting towards me.
Right. Right.
So that was how I tapped into my intuition. Because as a people pleaser and like a perfectionist, I always wanted to make sure I was right, right? Like I was doing
Hmm.
the right thing. I was
Hmm.
saying the accurate thing or whatever. But doing this allowed me to be human.
Right. Hmm. Right.
I may have made decisions that maybe were not the right decision or best
Yeah.
decision, but because that's what I wanted to do and I trusted myself, that just built more trust in myself.
Mm.
And now, I'm a stone cold killer. Like if like I don't even second guess. Like,
Ah.
if there is like if I feel confused about anything, that's an automatic no for me. Automatic
Mm.
no.
Yep.
And
Hmm.
sometimes I slip up, especially if you see like this is a really good person, but there's some type of something incongruent or whatever. You're like, maybe I'm just not catching. So you're catching it. You're
Yeah.
catching it. You are. And you got to give yourself props that you are like a lot more intuitive and like smarter than you think you are.
Mm.
Truly, truly, especially if you've lived a life of hypervigilance.
Oh yeah.
What you know what's going
Right.
on. You
You
know
gotta
what's
trust
going
yourself.
on.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh, but then I had to build like a new skill set. And part of that was, and this is the fourth epiphany that I had, it is like you had to train your mind to think in possibilities.
Hmm.
For me, letting go of knowing that something will turn out in a certain way
Hmm.
is what keeps me going. It truly does.
Mm.
Because it's like there's no room for disappointment or despair, right? It's always a not yet. A not,
Yeah.
just a not yet. Oh, like it's not yet. It's not yet. And I tell myself all the time, like, oof, my story is just getting better. My story is just getting
Mm.
better. Every disappointment,
Even
every
what you're
setback,
telling yourself. makes a difference.
Yes, yes. Look, I think there are a lot of motivational people out there that are essentially teaching people to gaslight themselves, and that's not what I'm about. But the
Mm-hmm.
fact of the matter, I think it's I'm a writer, right? So I'm creative, and like this is probably part of me not knowing how to stay present all the
Mm-hmm.
time. But as I go through something, I'm like, ooh, that's a good twist. That's a
Yeah.
good twist,
Mm-hmm.
like if I was writing a novel right now, it's like, oh my God. And then that happened to him, and he still made it out of that. And that's the way my mind thinks now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and again, this came from my building my business. I used to have a plaque, not even a plaque, it was like a piece of paper that I wrote. If I could get X without having Y, what other way would I go about doing it? And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, like the mentality was always like, I just don't know the answer. It is a possibility. As long as
Mm-hmm.
there's breath in my lungs, it's a possibility. I do not have the information yet. Perhaps I don't have the right connect or what have you, but there's a possibility, and all I need to do is resource that. And so that really, that mindset, uh, it just keeps me going. It really,
Yeah.
really does. And it's not, and so like as I talk to my higher power, and I think like um and I'm going through a hard time, it's I don't even be like, you promise I'm being lied to. It's just like, damn, how much better do you want this story to get? I literally say, like, how much better do you want this story to get? It sounds about good right now for,
Uh-huh.
something good to happen. Uh, but again, it's just is that mindset just keeps me going.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one, we talked about it in the beginning, embracing consequences.
Yeah.
Oh, like
Yeah.
there is, that's when you could become completely uncontrollable.
Mm.
Uncontrollable, because everybody, abusers, people that are living small, people that are shame led, they are hoping, they're counting on the world around them operating in the same way, which is, I will shrink to avoid this feeling.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And if you're like, oh no, I'm not going to shrink to avoid this feeling, matter of fact, I'm gonna put that shameful thing out there.
Mm.
You think you have something over me? Like, no, I'll tell you those. I'll tell you myself.
Right.
There's no, like, what are you gonna do? What's your next move? Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't feel the shame that you do.
Ah,
And that is like the ultimate draw for.
absolutely. And the fact
uh,
that you're accepting just the things that have happened. So, like you're saying, it is just powerful and you're able to do that. So, those are definitely such powerful epiphanies that you just are saying. And I hope people took down notes and either replay to take down just more notes and just kind of what would I just really want to hear on what you would do, right? Just the audience on what, let us know on what you would do, right? What epiphanies are you going to take with you for today and what you're going to start with first? And this just is such a powerful conversation. And I just thank you for just coming on and just allowing us to be able to hear you and your story. And I do hope that you do come back to maybe so we can hear even more. So how can people find you?
Yeah, so most of my platforms you can find me at Rise with Marlon. So on
Hmm.
TikTok, Rise with Marlon, Instagram, Rise with Marlon. My main hub is my website, marlonwesh.com. It also hosts my podcast, Rising from the Shadows, The Path to Reclaiming You. And yeah, I would love for you to follow, share your
Yes.
stories. If you want to tell your stories, you can. I don't remember that link. I think it's like tell my story dot rising from
We'll make sure to
the
put down in
shadows.com.
the
Yeah,
notes
well,
as well, so you can do
but
that.
yeah, like if you want to, I'm all about helping people break free from that feeling that they're so alone by hearing
Right.
other people's stories. So if you feel that need and you have that courage to do it, I welcome you to share your story with me. But thank you so much for having me,
Of
Samantha, and
course.
everyone for listening.
Yes, so know that overall the world needs exactly who you are, not who you should be.
Mm.
So thank you so much for allowing us to just be in your presence and hear you, and we will see everybody next week.
Bye.